Alright everybody, so unlike Solar 3.0 and start of last season, or I should say this season, right? Bungie actually decided to go ahead and give us a little bit of breadcrumbs a little bit early and tell us a little bit about the ARC 3.0 subclasses for all three classes. On top of all this information that we got in this article, we still have the TWAB for tomorrow, then we obviously have the showcase on Tuesday, and then the raid on the 26th. Let's go! First thing to talk about are some of the new abilities going to be introduced with ARC 3.0. And the first up is Amplify, which is key to the ARC 3.0 experience. Basically, think of Amplified as speed, both in terms of your just raw movement speed and in terms of your weapon handling. You remember when Blade Dancer basically had built-in quick draw on its subclass? It'll probably feel a little bit like that when you're Amplified. Also, while you're Amplified, you are able to perform longer slides. And unlike the other damage type buffs, for instance, Void's Invis and or Solar's Radiant, players will not have to equip any specific aspects or fragments in order to become amplified. By default, de facto, all ARC classes become amplified after rapidly defeating targets with any ARC damage. And then the aspects and fragments are just going to offer additional ways to become or benefit from being amplified. Something else to note with the ARC 3.0 subclass is that after sprinting for a few seconds, an amplified guardian will gain another boost in speed. And even when you do lose your amplified buff, as long as you keep running, keep sprinting, the speed boost buff is still going to stay active until you stop. All right, let's talk about ARC hunters. So first thing I really want to talk about is the fact that they are going to be adding blink back to the hunters kit. For everybody that played D1, you all already know that the Blade Dancer had blink as well. This means that the warlock will not be the only class in the game to have blink. Also, they are going to do just a nice little bit of a blink ability buff whenever they introduce ARC 3.0, which will be pretty nice for, void locks. Since I don't play hunter all that much, I'm just going to talk about the aspects that they listed in the article. They have the flow state. Hey, I love the flow state. Defeating a jolted opponent caused you to become amplified. When amplified, the hunter's dodge will recharge faster and make you more resistant to damage. Jolt is basically one of the ARC 3.0 debuffs, and basically what Jolt does is enemies who are jolted will periodically send silvers of chain lightning out to nearby enemies, damaging them in the process. The other aspect is going to be Tempest Strike, allows the hunter to perform a sliding melee that launches an arc wave along the ground, dealing significant damage and jolting enemies in its path. And then they have Lethal Current. After dodging, the hunter's melee lunge range is increased and their next melee attack jolts the target and creates a damaging lightning aftershock. When used with the Arc Staff Super, after dodging, the hunter's next staff light attack hits twice. In addition, hitting a jolted enemy with a melee attack will blind them. Blinding is the other ARC 3.0 debuff, but we already know what blinding does. They mostly talk about Titans in this article. However, one thing I want to note is that for at least Storm Trance, they're going to update it to where the super now gets both landfall and ionic blink, so you don't have to choose whichever one you would want to have to go with. Because let's be real here, if you're going to run a Storm Trance in PvP, you have to run ionic blink. Now you get both landfall and ionic blink. Yeah, Storm Trance is going to be a little bit more in the PvP. Also, the warlocks will be getting a new melee called Ball Lightning. It's literally called Ball Lightning. The three aspects for the warlock are going to be Arc Soul. Who would have thought that one? Everybody knows what an Arc Soul does. Lightning Surge. The warlock activates their melee while sliding to transform into a ball of lightning and teleport forward, calling down a field of lightning bolts at the exit point that jolts targets. Something to note about the Arc Soul: while you're amplified, the Arc Souls will be shooting faster. The last aspect for the warlock is going to be the Electro Static Mind. Arc ability kills and kills on Arc debuffed enemies create ionic traces. When you collect any ionic trace, you become amplified. Keep in mind, ionic traces were previously only available to middle tree warlocks and now are available for all three classes, which is awesome. Whenever you do collect an ionic trace, it will add energy for all of your abilities. All right, let's talk about the Titan, because they really did go a lot in detail, at least more on the Titan than they did in any other class in this article. One of the biggest changes coming to the Arc Titan is going to be the new thruster class ability. By double tapping a button, the Titan bursts in their throttle direction at speed, performing a quick first-person evade comparable in distance to a hunter's dodge. Titans are also going to be getting a new melee ability called Thunderclap, which I think is a beautiful name. The Titan holds the melee button and charges up arc energy that can be unleashed in either a quick, powerful jab or held and built up to be unleashed in a furious One-Punch Man style blast that will devastate an opponent. The damage is significant. A 90% charged Thunderclap will one-shot guardians in PvP PvP, I can already see how that can get annoying. They do say the build up for that will be slow, so we'll see whenever this stuff does drop. Alright, let's talk about some of the aspects, and they also release a little bit of fragments for the Titan as well. So, the first aspect is Touch of Thunder. This is basically Touch of Flame, but for Arc Titans. Improves arc grenades in the following ways. Flashbang fires an additional blinding impulse on its first bounce. Pulse Grenade. When the grenade damages an enemy, it creates an ionic trace for the Titan. Pulse Grenade's damage increases over time as the grenade lingers after impact. Lightning Grenade grants an additional charge for Lightning Grenade and jolts targets on initial blast. That's pretty cool. Storm Grenade creates a roaming thundercloud that moves and tracks enemies, similar to the Stasis Hunter's Silence and Squall super, firing bolts at the ground underneath it. That is fucking cool. The Juggernaut aspect. While sprinting with full class ability energy, the Titan gains a frontal shield that blocks incoming damage. When amplified, the shield is stronger. Once the shield is depleted by taking damage, the player's class energy is depleted. If you are on a Titan, you're going to be running 100 resilience anyways. Then the final aspect is Knockout. Melee kills trigger health regeneration and makes the Titan amplified. Critically wounding an enemy or breaking their shield increases melee range and damage for a brief period. Titan's base melee becomes arc empowered while Knockout is active. The incentive to punch and punch and punch on a Titan just grows ever more. Let's look at some of these little fragments that they mentioned as well. Spark of Beacons. When the player's amplified arc special weapon kills create a blinding explosion. Spark of Resistance. When the player is surrounded by enemies, the player has increased damage resistance. Spark of Momentum. Sliding over ammo will reload your weapon and grant a small amount of melee energy. Sliding over heavy ammo increases the amount of energy granted. And then Spark of Shock, the player's arc grenades jolts enemies. Keep in mind we might be getting more information tomorrow in the TWAB, and we'll be getting access to all of this content with Season 18 on August 23rd.